Evening, everybody. I will call to order the Marin Water Special Board Meeting of May 1, 2024. Terry, if we could have roll call, please.
Director Monty Schmidt,
Here.
Director Jed Smith,
Here.
Vice President Matt Sampson,
Here.
and President Ranjiv Kush.
Here.
Currently not here is Director Larry Russell.
Thanks, Terry. Molly, I'm assuming we go through the regular agenda adoption.
Because it's a special meeting with a singular item, we do not have that and requirement, and we didn't put it on the agenda. So you're free to go directly to our item du jour.
Great. Okay. So we can then start with the Water Efficiency Master Plan Workshop and update.
Great. Good evening, Paul Sellier, Water Resources Director. And before we get going this evening, I just wanted to make a couple comments. So of course, I'm joined by Carrie Pollard, Water Efficiency Manager, and Adrian Mertens. And before Carrie and Adrian take us through the most interesting part of the evening, just kind of an opening remark. Water efficiency has been part of the ethos of Marin and Marin Water since at least the drought of 1976. And probably before that. And we have, a diverse, so this master plan will kind of continue that tradition. And we have a diverse customer base, or a customer base with diverse views, at least, on how we should be using water. And our master plan really is aiming to help those customers kind of in their quest for saving water. So all of the programs and incentives and things that are in that master plan are really geared toward helping our customers save water. And over time, right, like all plans we know can be improved. So we intend to review, monitor, and adapt this plan in the coming years. And I'm sure we'll be discussing the performance metrics of the plan along the way. So just wanted to open with that remark before handing it over to Carrie to take us through the first set of slides.
Very good. Thanks, Paul. Very good. All right. Good evening. So starting with an overview of what we're going to cover this evening. We'll start with the development of the master plan, a little bit about the process. Then we'll dive into some water use patterns. We'll look at the evaluated measures that ultimately became the Water Efficiency Master Plan portfolio, and their associated water savings, and how those water savings will result in water use projections and impacts to our community, and how we expect water use to change. Recognizing the importance of community outreach and engagement to encourage our customers to actually participate in these programs. We have a whole section, which Adrian will cover, on community outreach after we kind of talk about the details and the measures in the plan. And then we'll close out with some near-term board actions, recognizing that the master plan includes some items that have been teed up over the last year or so that are ready to be implemented. And we want to get some additional input from the board as we kind of move these items through as we finalize the master plan as well, kind of in tangent with each other. So development of the master plan. So we went through these first three sections of the plan back in 2020, right? Looking at what we had done in the past, looking at what is the potential for water saving, and identifying programs and policies that we think we could potentially implement. Then the drought hit, of course. So we set that aside. And when we came back to it, we realized the remaining potential savings had changed significantly. And we really needed to regroup and decide and evaluate kind of under these new conditions, where are we? So we recalculated the water savings potential, we re-identified programs, and then we also added this fourth step of seeking input from the community. We held an all-day community workshop for our customers to come and hear kind of what we're planning with the master plan, but also to get ideas from them and hear from them on what they want to see us implement. And I'll point out when we get through the slides that we've actually incorporated a few of those comments into the master plan as we move, so we can consider them as we move forward.
How many of those meetings did you have?
We had one public workshop, one community workshop, an all-day workshop at a Corte Madera Community Center.
Okay.
But we've talked about the master plan at board meetings and committee meetings for years.
Yes.
Yes. We then took all of the measures that had not just the measures that ultimately ended up in the master plan, but a whole slew of measures, and we did a cost effectiveness evaluation on them. We decided on the portfolio that we would move forward with, and we established those water saving targets. And here we are today with a master plan that's all but final. So some of the outcomes of the development of the master plan. We have a 5-year plan to identify strategies to help us achieve the maximum practicable amount of water savings, right? So what's the range within the community that we think we can actually achieve? We wanted an engaging and easy to read report, but within a detailed appendix, right? So that's crazy spreadsheet that we've heard about, and it is a lot of details. We wanted to have that in there, but we didn't want that to be the focus of the master plan. We wanted it to be digestible and understandable for our community, but also, right, allow those folks who want to take a deep dive to do so. And we also looked at the district strategic plan goal for reliable water supply, and that goal was a reduction of 800 acre feet in the next 5 years. And we didn't set that as a limitation. What we wanted to do is say, recognizing we have that, but can we do more? What's something that's aspirational that we can go beyond that? And that's really where we ended up. And so we'll talk about a bit of those details in a moment. So starting to look at our water use patterns. What we have here is water production going back to 2000. And the reason why we went so far back is that it really helps tell the story of drought and drought rebound and how quickly we tend to anticipate drought rebounds, once water supply conditions have recovered. So in 2011, we start to see an uptick after that, mid 2010 rebound or 2010 drought. And then again in 2017, we start to see a rebound there. When we look at our current water use, it's incredible that we are maintaining that. This is through 2023, right? So not including anything from 2024, but maintaining and fairly consistently maintaining that incredible level of efficiency. And I think we can acknowledge that we are starting to see, and we will likely start to see a rebound, right? But where we are from 2023 it's impressive. It's very impressive. I think those are all my high points on that slide. Okay. Now kind of going from production, taking a closer look at consumption, right? Because they're very different. We looked at our residential per capita water use for 2022 for all of our residential customers. So not just single family, but all multifamily customers as well. And we have a distribution here for all water utilities within the state who report this same data as us to the state board. And in 2022, we were at 68 gallons per capita per day on average for that year for just our residential customers. So you may ask, so who are the folks to the left of us? Who's doing better than us? It would be cities like San Francisco, SFPUC, right? High percentage of multifamily housing, which means lower water use and very few landscapes. So they're all somewhat different, right? We're all unique in our own special way, but that's just one example.
Carrie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
that 68's indoor and outdoor, that's total use.
Total annual average for the year.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you.
So winter water use is another component of this, right? So for winter in 2022, we were at 46 gallons per person per day for our residential customers, okay? And this is important when we take a closer look and really focus in on indoor consumption, indoor use. We can look at our flume data that we've seen before, also from 2022, which shows our indoor use at 31 gallons per person per day. And the difference between these two is that this is a fixture-based calculation. The prior slide was consumption through the meter for all of our residential customers. This is indoor fixture use. So we know that the difference between those two numbers is irrigation during the winter, maybe some leaks, right? Possibly. And any other use that wouldn't be captured as this fixture count. So we may say, okay, 31, these are outliers. Flume customers are really engaged with their water use. They're, hypersensitive. We could add 10% to this for that, right? Say, okay, well, that puts us in the mid 30s. We could say maybe Flume AI and their process for determining which fixtures isn't 100% accurate. We could do that too and add another 10%. That still puts us only in the mid 30s. It's incredibly low. It really, between these two metrics, it really helps us appreciate that our focus doesn't need and should not be on indoor water use. Our focus should really be on outdoor water savings as we move forward, recognizing the successes that we've already seen.
Carrie, sorry, one more clarifying question. Rough percentage of district customers that actually have an installed functioning flume?
Yeah, so there's this data is about 2,000 customers.
Okay, thank you.
I believe it's just over, maybe like 2,100 in 2022. Yeah. Okay, so recognizing where we are with indoor use, We came up with this list of measures to evaluate as part of the master plan, and the portfolio includes these existing measures that are really focused on, they're sort of here focused based on outdoor use. So we have our turf conversion programs on the top, then moving into our smart irrigation controllers, laundry to landscape rain barrels and pool covers. And then we have our customer support programs like AMI, our home site visits CAP program, and our non-residential water surveys program and flume detection program, right? So while those could be indoor and outdoor, those support programs, most folks reach out to us because of their outdoor water use, right? So we kind of look at them in that way. Of course, we kept our faucet aerators and shower head giveaways. Anyone could pop into the lobby here and get all sorts of low flow fixtures to help reduce their indoor water use if needed. So when we look at the new measures, right, so those are our existing measures. When we look at new measures, there's really two buckets, if you would. And I'll note the blue text just calls out the items we'll take a deeper dive in later on in the discussion. But there's really two buckets. Our pilot projects, which have already been modeled for implementation, and that we have models and samples available from other utilities that have found successes. They have estimated water savings. We're kind of at the point where we could really fully evaluate whether or not it makes sense for the district through implementation, a small implementation of a pilot, right? So those are those top ones. The bottom piece are the policy considerations. And each one of these policy considerations are an outcome from that community workshop. And it wasn't just one community member bringing up a suggestion, it was repeated over and over again. And we didn't want to, in development of the master plan, it's a 5-year plan, say, when we publish this plan, we're going to decide upfront whether or not it's a go or a no-go, right? That we didn't think it made sense to wait to go through that process. We wanted to put them in the plan and recognize that we should evaluate them and we should see whether or not they make sense to the district, see who else has implemented them as we move forward and implement the plan over the next 5 years. And I think it's important to note, right, that regulations do play an important role in behavior change. They're, we think about seat belts and vehicle fuel efficiency standards, right? No one wanted that up front, but now what do we seek out when we go to buy a new car is our miles per gallon, right? And so it's an opportunity for us to say what makes sense for our community and do that evaluation as we go through this process. So we took those existing measures there on the left, and because we're familiar with all of them, there's nothing really new there on those existing measures, but I did want to kind of take a deeper dive in just a couple of them so that I can walk you through the process we went through in establishing what were our targets and goals for each of these measures. So looking at our turf conversion program, during the drought was when we launched this program. We had never had a turf conversion program in the past. And in those 2 years, we replaced almost 400,000 square feet of turf, which is incredible. And Adrian will speak to this. We did a survey to determine what were the motivations for those folks. And we know there was drought awareness. They wanted to do the right thing for their community. But we also have the people who had heard about North Marin's program or any other program in the Bay Area and said, well, if my utility ever did that, I would be interested. They were ready to roll. They were interested and ready to take that action because they had heard about it in the past. And so we got those early adopters up front. When the drought ended, we transitioned to a tiered program. And in the last year and a half, we've only had 8 only, which is still not bad. Nothing to shake a stick at, right? 88,000 square feet of turf removed. And you can see the breakdown. And so then you think about the future goals of 170,000 square feet. That may seem too high, too low, depends on your perspective. But I wanted to just help kind of appreciate how we got to that 170,000 square feet. 70,000 of it is for non-functional turf, right? We know those who has non-functional turf on their site. We can approach them. So we feel like we're more prepared to be able to take clear action and convert that non-functional turf in a more meaningful way. Knowing it's a smaller number, but we know where to go and target them. The other 100,000 square feet are for customers that are going to have to come to us, right? It's a voluntary action, but there's a larger opportunity there. And so while what we did here is we really wanted to have some aspirational goals, but have them anchored in data and anchored in a system and a methodology that we developed them that we felt we could achieve with, the right resources and time and effort.
So Carrie, just one
Yeah.
quick thing. I mean, 393,000 square feet it sounds impressive, but it's like, nobody knows how big that is. And I just, the danger of the internet and a phone, that's 7 football fields. That's a pretty huge amount of space that I think a lot of us can picture in those terms. And that's really impressive.
It really is. It took almost a decade for, I think, Santa Rosa to hit 1 million. So, I mean, we're well on our way in just a few years. Moving on to the other existing measure that I wanted to touch on is this savings potential from AMI. And so the Water Efficiency Master Plan assumes that that we will see system-wide deployment of AMI. It actually has it in 2028 is when that would start as a marker within the plan because we needed to give it a date. And we can already see some movement with implementation of that system-wide deployment with the program manager position that's currently in recruitment, which we're thrilled about. But when we think about the water savings for AMI, currently the way we're achieving water savings is that staff prints out letters and mails them to our AMI customers, notifying them of leaks because we don't have a high uptake of leak alerts within the program. And so when we think about the future of AMI and maximizing the water savings, we want to be able to minimize, right, the staff time to achieve those savings. So looking at things like utilizing our existing AMI analytics to empower our customers and monitor water savings. So as we add AMI meters to our system, we can start wrapping our heads around that big data. And so when we do get to full deployment, we have a better understanding of how we can utilize it. That's really kind of what we're thinking about. Another area would be doing this AMI pilot, which is upcoming, and we're kind of teeing up here, is to determine the effectiveness. What's the most effective marketing and outreach strategies for getting folks to engage with AMI? Why are they not getting on the EyeOnWater platform? Why are they not setting up leak alerts? And then finally, ultimately, to maximize that automated alerts to customers. So this could be done in a number of ways. So for example, right now, customers will have to get online and have a login to pay their bill, and they have a separate login if they have AMI to log on to EyeOnWater. If there's a single login where you pay your bill, you get an overview of your water use, you get a deeper dive into your AMI, and maybe you have your residential water budget there so you know how efficient you are within your lot. That's a great opportunity for us to empower our customers to understand what they can do without us constantly bombarding them with, participate in our program. So I think that the rollout of AMI, there's a lot of potential there, but we want to make sure that it's done in a meaningful way so that we can maximize it. And that's important.
Carrie, one quick question on what we're doing right now. So with the 5,500 accounts we have in the district, do we have a deployment timeline that's long enough to support looking at pre-AMI water use for those customers and then post and seeing just as a subset of have the AMI customers actually seen a reduction in their water use?
You mean for future deployment?
Well, just to understand the value.
For
The existing customers.
The existing customers now. So have they been deployed long enough where we can actually get something meaningful out of that?
We could. I think if we took the time and dug into that data, I'm sure we probably could. It's been since 2018 for many of them, and there's been constant deployment. So it's been, close to 5 years for some.
Yeah, depending if it's not a huge lift, it'd be really interesting to see that, especially when we go to try to validate the value of AMI. If we actually have data saying these subset have already seen a big reduction.
Right.
So that'd be interesting to see if there's time.
Yeah, I think we want to take a closer look at that, right? We started with dedicated irrigation meters, which is somewhat of a different beast, right? And then we also focus on our high water users. So it's not necessarily a good proxy for everyone else across the district, but we might be able to gain some insights from it. So
plus, don't forget weather is the unknown factor. So you can't really compare January and January of 10 years apart or 5 years apart with just looking at the data, because of the weather issues. So it's a little complicated to make meaningful sense. The data is easy, relatively speaking. The rest of it is making sense of the data.
Paul just made a great comment. The drought also would have a significant impact on water use, right? And so that takes a number of years out of that data set. So
And it's right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Carrie, what's the timing for the AMI pilot that's coming up?
We're waiting until our project manager gets on board so that they can have all the say they need to develop something that makes sense.
I I expect the position will be filled probably in about a 3-week time frame, and it's internal, so depending on the successful candidate, there'll be a bit of a transition, but there's a lot of energy, and really it's going to get up and going very quickly. We'll come back to the board, probably the position, and we'll be laying out the pilot timing and process and what we're going to be looking at.
All right. So that was kind of a deeper dive just into those two measures, but we did have some kind of overarching an overarching approach that we took when we evaluated all the measures that ultimately ended up in the master plan. So we were looking for this multi-benefit approach to selecting measures to provide customer exposure to our high benefit program. For example, CAPS. Our customer assistance program is incredibly expensive. It's very staff intensive, and we know that. But it helps our customer appreciate and understand, how do they read their water bill? What does their water bill mean? How do they figure out how many gallons they use based on their water bill? How do they read their water meter? How do they look for leaks using their water meter? You know, how do they adjust their irrigation controller when their landscaper comes and turns it on to run every day, or the battery dies and they have no idea, right, how to reprogram it? We also then walk them through all of our various programs that we offer at the district. So if we do a CAP and someone takes out some of their lawn, the water saving is attributed to the replacement program, right? So very little water savings is attributed to a CAP, but it's supporting those high benefit programs, which is important. Another couple of examples would be rainwater harvesting and gray water. It's so interesting how excited people who are into gray water and rainwater get, right? It's contagious. We did an analysis looking at our webinars for gray water we offered during COVID. We had 1,400 customers sign up for a webinar. I don't know if you've ever held a webinar, but that is incredibly impressive. Granted, only 50% showed up, but that's still 700 folks. 8% of those actually purchased a gray water kit. But what's really impressive here is that 60% of that 700 participated in a program. 22 participated in one other program, 16 participated in 2 other programs, and 4% participated in 3 other programs. And that was after they went to the webinar, right? And so these are the kinds of things that we want to take into consideration, these multi-benefit, all these other benefits that occur when we offer these range of programs, even though they may not be cost effective, they may not pencil out in of themselves. The other piece would be looking at outreach. And I know Adrian will touch on this, but I just wanted to briefly mention that when we look at program participation, we can see there's demographics that have historically below average participation. We've been focusing on our high water users, but as we move forward in this 5-year implementation, we know that renters and low income customers are another area that we can kind of drill in on and figure out how do we reach them in a more meaningful way. And there's an opportunity there to really help us meet our goals. So how much water saving are we talking about here? For the portfolio within the water efficiency master plan, we have projections based on a anticipated level of participation, our incentive levels, and the anticipated water savings. And they result in short, medium, and long-term water savings, with, of course, the highest savings being in 2045 at about 4,000 acre feet that year. We also did, part of this analysis was, of course, what are the costs for this portfolio? And the costs are accounted for the costs here are accounted for as district costs. So this is staff time, this is the incentive issuing, whatever the payment might be for that incentive, and the marketing as well. Customer costs were not taken into consideration because they're the burden of the customer's choice. For example, our Smart Controller program, our Rainbird program, which we recently launched. A customer can get a Rainbird controller for $50 out of pocket. They also, and we would pay $100. They also could talk to their landscape contractor and buy a $2,000 controller with all sorts of bells and whistles, and we still would only pay the $100, right? So that burden, that's their choice, right? We have options. So I think it's very difficult for us to attempt to determine, what that range of costs could be for the customers in doing this analysis. An industry standard is that you look at what are your internal costs and let the customer choose what's right for them. So that's what we've done here.
And Carrie, the water saving goals are cumulative.
They're not. That's a snapshot of 2045. Or excuse me, the 4,000 is a snapshot in the year 2045.
But it says 1,000 acre feet per year, AFY.
So in the year of 2045, it would be 4,000 acre feet.
But what is the 1,070 acre feet per year? Is that what that means? That's not, that
So
should
it'd
be
be-
AFY?
In 2045, we anticipate 1,000 acre feet savings. And then in 2035, by 2035, we anticipate 3,000, a reduction in demand of 3,000 acre feet.
It's not cumulative. It's the savings that we would be experiencing in those time periods.
Against the baseline of,
Of what we're projecting our demands would be at that time without the action.
So in 2025, with this program, we expect to save 1,000 acre feet
A year.
per
by 20
year going forward from there.
Per year. That year would have a 1,000 acre foot reduction. Yes,
That year would. And then, so then
because it would be then, yeah,
the cumulative from 2021 to 2025 would be several thousand acre feet.
yes.
5 times that 1,000.
Would it be 5 times that, or is it
Yes.
1,000 at the end?
It builds. Yeah, the cumulative would be 1,000 every year. And
So that's
then-
5,000 acre feet of savings.
Now I'm confused. Sorry. So in the 21 to 25 timeframe, we expect by say 2025, we're saving 1,070 acre feet per year.
Yes,
When we are at 2035, let's just take the back ends of these periods because it's kind of confusing to have these things like this.
Yeah.
In 2035, we expect to have be saving over what would have been consumed that year, 3,350. Okay.
so I think
So on. So
I think when we talk about it in per capita, and we can see the multiple years, I think that might help explain it a little bit, right? So we use 2020 as kind of our baseline use, and then we project it out from 2020 out to 2045. What do we expect the water use demands to be? And what would the reduction be off of those demands with these programs in place?
Gotcha. Why wouldn't you just do a line?
Yeah, and
Sorry,
in our,
this is just confusing the way this is. I'll
I
simple line. I'll
appreciate
give you
that. No, yeah.
savings over time. Yeah, cool.
yeah, it's funny, Carrie, because you are showing us discrete, these numbers against what the projections would have been. So they'd be reduced by the amount you're showing here. But somehow that does incorporate the savings that were accumulated previously.
Prior,
They
yes.
add up there. So in a way, it is cumulative. It's a little bit,
When we dive into this at the Water Efficiency Committee meeting, I'll have a better slide articulating right, but
so
it is.
by 2045, we'll be saving, according to this analysis, 4,160 acre feet a year from what demands would have been in the absence.
Yes,
But if you add up the savings that we've achieved year on year, it's going to be much higher than 4,160. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Those are two, big distinctions, I think. The cumulative savings versus what we're getting at any particular time point.
And how's the 1830 calculated?
The 1830 is calculated based on staff time.
No, I know how to get the dollars.
Okay,
How do you get the number? What do you divide by?
we
You got your total cost, divide by it.
by the 2040, the total savings from 2020 through 2045 for implementing all these programs. Yeah, the total savings. So it would be.
So you accumulated the number.
It would be the cumulative. Yes. Yes.
But I mean, this is the key. We're focused on this because this is what we've been asking for all along. We want yearly numbers that show what you're targeting to save an acre feet with these programs. And I still don't get it. I mean, I just don't. So is it 200 a year? And it adds up to 1,000? I don't know what a cumulative means. It doesn't seem like it's cumulative.
These numbers are not cumulative.
Yeah.
These are,
I heard that. So I actually
yeah,
don't
so it
understand.
is, I
I
appreciate
bet
that
Carrie
it will
can
be
redo
better
this
next
graphic in
time.
like in
But
2
it is
minutes.
what we asked for last time. So it's
It's just
Yeah,
the way
I
it's presented.
mean,
It's
we're establishing goals, which the board wanted, and we'll clean up the clarity. But the key is we have these milestone goals that the program is designed to achieve.
but we don't understand what the goals are. So we can't,
Well,
how do we prove
right,
it?
right. So the goal is by 2045, 4160, by 2035, 3350, by 2025
in
on
that
an
year-
annual basis.
Yeah.
To have achieved that savings from the baseline. I wanted Carrie just to touch on the other part of the equation, the projections. My assumption is it just adds population and assumes the same per capita demand.
It does. Yeah, adds population.
And how much is the cost? Where does the 1830 times the acre feet come into the number, the total, what's the total cost to get to 2045? You're gonna like what I'm gonna ask next, so
Right.
don't be shy here.
I would mean it's 1830 times 23 years it would be the total cost for the program, right? Times that the total acre feet.
But is that like, is that the net present value of that cost? So in 2045, 1830 is
It's very
Half.
different.
very little. So you're looking at the net present value of the cost of these
Yes.
programs.
Yes.
So the cost per acre foot will be significantly less than that. Or
in 2045. So in 2045, what is we're saving 4,160 acre feet per year. What is I think Jed's trying to ask, what's the cost per acre foot in that year? You probably don't have that on the top of your head.
No.
That's
net present value, then.
Yeah, it grinds out, yeah.
Yeah.
You're guessing at the interest rate, but you
Right,
guess the interest
exactly.
rate.
Inflation.
But still, it's a great number. I mean, like, and I think you'll redo the graphic
I
and it'll
will.
be get
Yes.
so much easier. I know I think you know what we all wish we were seeing, and it would be easier to see.
Yes.
Right. The thing that I'm seeing and focusing on is that within 2 years, we're expecting to be saving 1,000 acre feet of water annually. And that within another 10 years, that number triples to 3,350 acre feet per year. Those are great numbers.
Yeah,
Move the
especially
graph for the next discussion. My apologies.
when you consider the conversation yesterday of the cost
Yeah, exactly.
to get those numbers, 300 million, 600 million. What I'd like you to think about is if we doubled our budget for conservation or tripled it, what could we do to improve the return? If anything.
Yeah, is there a diminishing return? If we double it, do we get double the savings, triple, and so forth? So it'd be great there was some way to understand, should we be investing even deeper, or is there really
Yes.
a limit?
That's exactly it. And further in that line, you kind of brushed off the $2,000 controller, but I presume there's some reason they sell $2,000 controllers. I mean, soil moisture and all that, I presume. Should we be spending more money on those subsidies for those kinds of more expensive controllers? More than $100. $100 on 2,000 is kind of, $100 on 150, that's a little different, but should we be thinking about $1,000?
Right. So the water savings remain the same, right, from each controller. And so the question is, when we developed these programs, we took into consideration the cost of Sonoma water as kind of our baseline of what we were kind of targeting to stay around for the total cost of the program. So that would, increasing the rebate would obviously increase the cost per acre foot. So since there are controllers out there at a more reasonable price, and someone can choose to spend, more for that other one.
What's the difference between a $2,000 controller and 150?
Some of them have their own weather stations, then you don't need.
But they must do a
weather
better job.
service.
I
Not
mean,
necessarily,
well,
Diminishing return on a lot more money.
maybe.
And more parts
right?
to break.
More maintenance as opposed to using cloud-based weather data. I mean, it's just, how controlled do you want to be within your own irrigation system?
Well, let's get back to the bigger question. If we doubled the expenditure, what would happen? I don't expect you to answer now.
Yeah, no, it's a good
But,
question. Yeah.
Think about it so that we talk about it the next time, that you have a feel for what that means.
Yeah.
Okay.
Harry, related to that, there's probably a couple of ways at looking at how low we can go, right? One is average water consumption. So if we're at 68 gallons per person per day, what's a bottom limit there? I know when we were in 1977, we were limited to 35 gallons per person per day. And for many people, that starts to induce some stress. But then, of course, we've got very high users. So just looking at the average is not the only way to think about how low we can go. So there's maybe a couple of different parameters you have to think about to determine what is the total savings we can achieve regardless of how much we spend, right?
And I would just add, so Adrian has some interesting information in the next section about customer motivations. And we're all motivated differently. Some financially, as you're pointing out, Director Russell, others quite differently. It's more of an ethos and sustainability perspective. And you'll hear more about that kind of targeted outreach component. And then I just add that there really isn't a lot of information out there around, and this question of cost driving participation, there just isn't a lot of information out there. I think maybe some of the best information we might have is from the motivations that we saw from our customer surveys that we'll hear about later.
But I think building on Larry's point, which is really how I've felt from the beginning of doing our water supply roadmap, is that supply and demand are obviously integrally related. And I really think that we should have our water efficiency efforts tied to the analytics that we're doing on water supply and storage. The investment that we put here has to be viewed relative to building a $500 million dam, or related to spending money on increasing the pipe for conveyance from Sonoma. We have to look at them next to each other, and we have to look at how water efficiency and conservation can help drive us to be more sustainable from a water supply perspective for a long time. The less demand we have, the less supply we need. So I think the analytics should go together, and I really feel like should be associated with your monthly reports that you're showing us on water supply and storage. They affect each other. And Larry's point, I think, is spot on. Where can we spend more? Because if we're getting this kind of bang for our buck, it's way better than so far anything that you've shown us on conveyance and storage, by far. So then it's like, how far can we push it?
So the fact that you've got through 12 slides only shows how interested we are in this topic. And I think it's also, and it's great after last night's conversation where we were really looking at this very much on this question of cost per acre foot as we look at what are our alternatives. I just want to state maybe what you would say, and not to speak for you, which is that it's one thing when we have engineers design dams or conveyance facilities that are, there's uncertainty there. We're talking about human behavior. Very, very tricky to present. So I know that us saying double the number of dollars and we get double the benefit. I get that that is how complex that is. And all the, it would be one thing if there was data across the United States, but then it's not Marin. It doesn't take into account our own people. And so we're asking a lot we want a lot of precision in a very imprecise strategy. So thank you for all the wants that we want from you, but it just shows how excited we are about what we're seeing.
I think, though, we have a very powerful tool that we haven't used very much. And that is the one where you have the survey from the water district come in and then you get locked out of tier 4. I think that's a very powerful tool. I mean, it only moves you from tier 4 to tier 3, but it's the kind of incentive that is extremely valuable. In other words, you say you do these 6 things, whatever they are. I mean, take out your grass, do whatever you want in the list, and then you get a permanent reduction. You never see tier 4. And there's obviously a financial impact, but it's an interesting way, because probably no matter how rich people are, there's a point where their innate greed, or whatever you want to call it, self-protectionism kicks in.
So Larry's referring to our Tier 4 exemption program, right? And the goal of this, and as we work with our customers, is ensuring a site is efficient, right? And so, right, just because you have a large lot doesn't mean you're inefficient. When we look at our high water users, even if they're putting down mulch and installing a gray water system, there's still a lot, and qualifying for Tier 4 exemption, there's still a lot of opportunity there for them to reduce, even though they've checked those 6 boxes, right? And so either making that much more robust or putting them on a water budget, or finding ways that actually, if that's something that the board's interested in, finding ways to really ratchet that down so that we are getting the bang for our buck in achieving those savings. Because right now there's a gap there. But yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on, and
Keep
maybe when we talk about GPCD, we'll kind of help understand and appreciate where we're at here. Okay, so before we talk about GPCD, I wanted to just kind of frame how the remaining conservation potential compares to both passive and this theoretical ceiling that we've talked about in the past. So passive savings is savings from plumbing code and building code and natural replacement, things that people are going to do on their own without our incentives. And of course, this theoretical ceiling then is if all customers in 2045 were instantaneously at their maximum level of efficiency, we'd see a reduction of 8,000 acre feet in that 1 year, right? So this is kind of a good kind of snapshot 1 year. So we're over 50% of that with our water efficiency master plan, which goes to show that it is quite aggressive, right? And we are really relying on the voluntary participation of our customers to hit these goals, which is important.
Is the theoretical ceiling based on a gallons per person per day number that, if all 200,000 60,000 accounts were using,
It is, and you're going to ask me what that number is, and I'm going to bring it back. I want to say it's under 50. I want to say it's like in the 40s. Okay, and then when we think about what is the impact on our water customers if we are able to achieve this 4,000 acre feet reduction in 2045. So this is a gallons per capita per day chart. So I don't want you to confuse this with the other gallons per capita per day chart we talked about earlier, which is only residential use, 68. This is district-wide, all water use within the district. And you can see in 2020, we were at 120 gallons per person per day. And as I mentioned, that was our baseline. And what we're proposing, and if we're able to achieve these goals, we'll be retaining much of the water savings we achieved during the drought and avoiding the historic rebound. So we really are asking a lot of our customers if we're able to hit these goals. These are, they're aggressive. And I think you see this in the chart. We're basically flatlining our water use for the next 20 years if we're able to achieve them. So putting more money at it, that would be us asking customers to go well below where they went as part of drought response. And, we recall what that looked like within the community. And I think being realistic about, but I mean, it's your decision, of course, but I think that this is an aggressive and realistic goal that we can strive for and really work towards achieving and having a significant impact on water use.
Yeah, I think it's our decision without a doubt. I'm
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
big fan of us versus them or you versus me or customers versus the board. I mean, we're all in it together.
And Carrie, I just want to, I mean, it could be aggressive. I don't know. That's why I ask you. You look at what has happened, in other cities that, especially, and I know that was like, through the 70s to the end of the previous century, like Southern California saw basically a flat water use, even though per capita, even though population grew. And so, but that was, of course, there was a lot of, 5-gallon toilets being replaced with other things. So I know that the amount of like efficiency that we can still get out there is less, but like, part of this is like, I don't understand the technologies that still may come along that might really dramatically change things. Maybe, I mean, and I look at our current water use right now, and maybe people have gotten used to, a significant reduction in and it's not arduous. And maybe we So maybe we can. I don't know. I would hate to have us plan for people to rebound when maybe the rebound won't look the same. Our rates have changed. That I know I've had people talk to me about how they've fixed leaks that they knew existed but weren't bothering to fix them until the rates changed, and then they went out and fixed them. So we may not see a rebound because people actually finally hit a price signal to go out and fix things.
It's not as, we're right now 4% higher than we were at this time a year ago. So we are actually seeing a rebound.
And that's in a very wet year as well.
Mhm.
So the next section is turning it over to Adrian to talk about the community outreach. And so I think we've
Go ahead.
So great, just finishing my point, I think if we're just trying to align on the analytics, not necessarily tell you to do any one thing or another so that we can together come up with solutions. And specifically, like, what are the sensitivities in increasing investment in different areas? How can we potentially do more? How did you come up with kind of the net present value of that 1830 and really get it? And then I think as importantly, claim credit for what we've done. When we look at water supply and conveyance and storage, this is a key factor. So we've already saved close to 1,000 acre feet, and sounds like per year we'll be doing that. So we're already making a big dent in that roadmap. Claim it, let the community know, congratulate ourselves, and keep going because we're going to do more. It's less critical than it is just kind of sharing the information in your thought process and going forward.
And even consider putting a counter on the webpage that counts gallons saved, cumulative, so people can see our efforts have achieved this through this date and this through the next date, and like an odometer.
all right. To Adrian.
Thanks, Carrie. So jumping right into community outreach and how we'll be moving forward to support the efforts of the master plan. Really kind of an important theme of how we'll shape our outreach going forward is understanding the customer. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but that's really going to guide how we shape our campaigns going forward so that we can ensure that we are connecting our customers to our programs and rebates. Oops, sorry, got ahead of myself. So looking closer at our how we gauge customer awareness and preferences. So primary methods that we use and will continue to use are our program participation rates. We're connecting with the water efficiency team often to hear how things are going. When we ramp up an outreach activity, what are the conversion rates that come out of that? What are they seeing in terms of participation? That's kind of an obvious one. And then digital engagement analytics from our outreach platforms. We're really lucky. We get a lot of insights from the tools that we use, both through paid advertising channels and also our own digital engagement platforms. And so we're looking at what's what's most interesting to our customers. What are they clicking on? What are they spending their most time on our website? And using that to help inform how we write our messaging and how we position and lay out the different outreach campaigns that we put together. And then, of course, anecdotal customer feedback and testimonials. That's everything from the direct conversations that we have with our customers out at events through email and phone calls, checking in with our customer services staff to hear the conversations they're having, that our board hears from the public, as well as our water efficiency folks when they're out at CAP appointments. It's really interesting to hear the kind of conversations that come up and where the focuses are. To help inform what we do with outreach campaigns. And then this last item is statistically significant data from periodic customer surveying. And I've bolded to emphasize that one. I want to spend a little bit more time on it because we did do a really important effort at the end of last year to do a customer survey working with a research and opinion firm that would help to guide us as we move forward over the next several years. And so the board has heard a very detailed presentation on the customer survey that we did at the end of last year, but I did feel it was necessary for a refresher. This is part of the appendix as well in the master plan. And so just as a reminder that survey collected 415 responses. We used random digit dial for that. As well as online surveying methods. And again, our research and opinion firm actually conducted the survey. And it was really aimed at gauging our single family and duplex residential customers' awareness and opinions on several different district focus areas. And tonight highlighting just the areas that pertain to this discussion are their views and awareness of water efficiency programs, their motivations for saving water, and then their preferences for district communications, how they like to get their outreach from us.
One suggestion I heard today,
Yeah.
Adrian, was using the water bill as a way to further be in touch with customer thoughts and surveys, and rather than them be random, you can actually be quite detailed because you're reaching everyone anyway, and you can use QR codes or a website to collect that data, and then you can parse it, knowing their customer numbers or otherwise, that it still can be anonymous, but you'll be able to understand what people are thinking. So you actually can reach everybody with surveys, and it could relate to recreation, it could relate to watershed, it could relate here, and it's a touch point you already have.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And we certainly could be doing more surveys of our customers just on specific program areas and all sorts of topics with the district. I do want to be clear when we're talking about random selection, right, we are trying to get a good selection across the district of our entire service area in different areas. And part of what the firm focused on was making sure that we had good representative sample from different parts of the service area. And you have a little bit more control through that method than if we're sending something out through the bill insert. In making sure that you are able to get representative responses from all areas.
You'll know. I mean, you'll know who's responding. Put in your customer number.
Sure. We'll jot that down. And then, sorry, there, I lost my train of thought a little. I think I covered everything on that slide. So some of the conclusions that came out of the customer survey, respondents found communications from Marin Water helpful, which was very good to hear. And, that was overall, majority ranked it that way. Most did prefer the monthly e-newsletter that's sent to their email inbox and the bill inserts that are mailed in their water bills as their preferred forms of communication. And we learned from the survey, those that were surveyed, that customers highly value using water efficiently. In addition, 3 in 4 of customer surveys say that reducing water usage is extremely or very important. Almost all customers that were surveyed said that they have taken steps to reduce their water usage. And a majority said that they do not need help reducing their water use, which was a little bit of a surprise to hear. But we did hear 2 in 5 said they could use help finding ways to reduce water use. Moving a few more conclusions that came out of the survey. So we heard from respondents that protecting water supply and preparing for future droughts are the major reasons why customers would reduce their water use. And then roughly 1/3 of customers say that they've used Marin Water's programs. However, many are unfamiliar with a number of the incentives that are available. So obviously opportunity exists there. And then the
Adrian,
cash.
sorry, remind me, was the survey done prior to the rate increase?
It was done following the rate
And
increase,
did
but
we-
wrapped up in late July.
And did we give the customers an option of saying if they were saving water due to cost or reducing water due to cost?
Yeah, it was in there. We didn't focus on that piece, but it was a lower ranked motivator than what we presented here, protecting water supply. That was the majority. It was about protecting water supply and preparing for future droughts. And sorry, I can't remember the breakdown of those percentages offhand. Let's see. The Cash for Grass rebate program had some of the highest awareness of all of our incentive programs and the rebate programs, but few customers that were surveyed have utilized that rebate incentive. So that kind of wraps up the conclusions that we learned from that surveying information. Again, that was just a brief summary, but those survey conclusions and our ongoing customer input we've heard from customers at the workshop, input that we continue to hear in everyday work, our digital analytics and our program participation levels are really going to help to inform and guide the strategies that we develop moving forward to support Carrie and her team's work. Oh, sorry. So we talk about what's next for our outreach and kind of where we really want to make sure we're focusing our work. Kind of broken it up into 4 main slides here and points. So we know that there's strong customer engagement with the ongoing kind of signature tools that we have, including the bill inserts in our monthly e-newsletter. We heard that in the survey. We also see that in our analytics, at least for our monthly e-newsletter. It has a really high open rate. It continues to perform strongly. However, data also shows that there's a lot of opportunity that remains to find ways to reach some of our customers who we know are not getting our communications, who are unfamiliar with our efficiency programs. We heard that that's true in the survey. And we want to make sure that they're aware of those programs and incentives that are available to them. And so kind of when it comes to action items around these points, we want to continue our broad outreach through those existing channels. They're working well. We want to keep that up, but we know that we need to look at new opportunities to connect to our harder to reach customers. And Carrie talked about our disadvantaged communities, our renters. We haven't spent a lot of time engaging with them, really trying to target them. Over the last year, we're focused right now on our high water users. We have more work with them planned. We feel like we're still just kind of dipping our toe into that, but we know over the next 5 years that we want to focus on some tracks to also look at reaching these other audience segments. And there are advertising strategies and some paid advertising opportunities that we can do to really just try to focus specifically on those communities. And we also see unique community partnerships being another way to leverage reaching some of those folks that we're not currently engaged with, who don't know about our programs, who don't read their bill inserts, who don't maybe even get a bill and receive that information. And so we want to make sure that we can do our best to try to find ways to connect with them. And so we know some education is needed to help our residential customers understand what a water efficient household truly is in Marin Water service area. And a lot of this was informed after our recent rate increase and having really long conversations with customers about their water usage, both the communications team, our customer services staff, and the water efficiency team. Customers, we would hear a lot, I've been such a, I've done everything to save water and, I conserve like crazy and certainly they've made efforts, but in looking and reviewing their water use history, it was obvious that there were areas that they probably needed extra support on. We were connecting them with CAP appointments. We had some good success stories out of some of that. But it really helped to present this understanding that they don't have a great baseline to know what efficiency looks like, especially for some of our higher water users that maybe aren't dialed into our programs and information. And so we recently, in the last committee meeting I chaired, we introduced the efficiency estimator tool, which really only focuses on indoor efficiency. And that's kind of our first step at trying to give them some sort of baseline to use to understand how their household compares to an efficient household in Marin Water. And we're looking at additional ways that we can strengthen that going forward. We heard some board member interest in looking at, how can you make it maybe like neighborhood areas so they can see, how a like home compares to them. And so we're looking at some ways to potentially do that in future years as well, in the absence of AMI or other tools like that that would help to support them with having a better understanding of their household usage.
That's an interesting idea, is getting neighborhoods to act as kind of, competitive with other neighborhoods. I can imagine on Nextdoor that could be kind of an interesting topic, and also you like neighborhoods, they're your neighbors, they're people that you often know, you have similar landscaping potentially. Like, again, it kind of has a way of creating more of a dialogue within their communities. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, and I'll let you finish. Sorry, keep going.
Oh,
You don't want to miss the momentum. If you have a little bit more, go for it.
I think I'm almost wrapped up. Yeah. So, and then we know there's still some customers who are open to assistance in reducing their water use, recognizing that's a minority of customers that want this assistance, though. And so that's helpful information and just kind of re-emphasizing that we want to be really narrow and more focused and narrowed in our approach to reaching our customers, especially as we spend our advertising dollars, making sure that we're being very thoughtful in how we spend that money and how we're trying to reach the people that really want our help, or where we think there really is opportunity to try to inspire some behavior change. And so that's really going to continue to be a focus going forward. We also see this idea of using real life customer success stories to inspire action, especially among those who may be skeptical or on the fence or unsure of if they really want to take the dive on, converting their lawn or adopting another practice we have. We've really just begun this kind of customer success story approach in our outreach, and have been surprised that it's actually going really well. We were worried about having some difficulties in finding candidates or willing participants, but we're having trouble actually keeping up right now, which is a good problem to have. And we see that we can really grow this to be something more going forward that keeps going. And right now we've been focused more on just providing that information through our existing outlet tools, but we see that we can really actually use that in maybe a different sort of way of implementing paid advertising campaigns. And, it's nice to have a tagline, it's nice to have flashy graphics, but telling someone's real story and putting it out there in different ways in your ads, if we can find willing participants, that may have a more meaningful effect. I think I know when I am looking at doing DIY projects at home, what are other people doing? I want to see like someone who has a house similar to mine, a small, not the Taj Mahal, beautiful dime, but like what's a real thing that's tangible for me. And so I think by trying to collect this broad-based customer success story portfolio, we have all these different examples that are scalable to what's happening in people's own households. And so, we potentially could inspire action in that way. And then finally, we want to use more behavioral data sets that are available. S3 Sensa information has a lot of information about our neighborhood areas. The zip codes is actually available throughout all of the country, but to really give information on the populations that live in those areas, their spending habits, what kinds of things they're interested in, so that we can look to tailor our advertising and our outreach campaigns to fit those different groups within our service area. And I think that is, nope, one more. And then finally, the community understands the importance of using water wisely and is motivated by preserving our supply in the face of climate uncertainty. And so we don't want to forget this too in our messaging, and really bringing it back to this is all about protecting our most precious natural resource, and reminding people of where the primary source of their water comes from, and using that narrative and visuals that help to tell that story frequently in our messaging, and connecting people back to that. It will continue to be an important part of what we do going forward. We can pause there.
Great. And the outreach effort continues to be impressive, especially how targeted it is. And hats off too, because changing hearts and minds is one of the hardest things to do. And I feel like we have a really good suite of answers for the believers. I think the options, the programs, everything that you guys are offering are really good for the believers. The question is, how do you get more people into the believers side? And so I'm not sure that everyone understands the why behind this from the community, just because there's a disengagement between day-to-day life, new members of the community, et cetera. And so you can look at the why a variety of reasons. One, if someone gets a bill for $200 in there, would you like to reduce your bill to $150? This is what it would take per day, and actually show some sort of rate calculation so people can understand, wait, if I shower every other day, then my rate goes down to what it is. Or put in a number. If we're looking at saving 4,000 acre feet a year, divide that by the number of customers, whatever it could be, and say we could have avoided the 21 drought if everyone had done this little bit, and start really putting a visual to it and some meaningful things. And I think that could reinforce your message, because to Jed's point, this is an us thing. This is a we process. And if everyone doesn't understand their part of their responsibility in terms of the greater good, then it's difficult to get the actual movement. So just things to consider.
All right. So I have a summary slide
I
here.
have a quick
Yeah,
one.
go ahead.
I couldn't agree more about the us and we. I've preached that for at least the last 10 years, that there is no us, or there's no we, or whatever you want to call it. There's no them. One thing that disappoints me a little bit tonight is the reason I signed on to the Zoom was to look at how many there are. There are like 5. And there's 3 here, so 8. That's pretty light public response, especially when it's as easy as signing on to Zoom. So I don't know if it's a lack of interest or a lack of advertising that the meeting was coming, but I would have hoped we would have seen a little more response from the public to follow this.
I have just a quick comment that's not related to the discussion. We're having still some problems with Zoom. I understand people can hear us, but they can't see the screen. So they do have a link and they can follow. We could talk about what page we're on, or we would need to take a quick break for 5 minutes and reboot the CMCM.
Well, that might be a reason why we don't have so many folks. Why don't we, I would suggest we take 5 minutes and make it accessible for folks.
I just got a text from Shuri. She said that they can't see the attendees, but they can see the PowerPoint.
Oh.
So,
Yeah,
so if that
fine.
you're okay with
That's
that, okay.
And,
Okay.
and I could see the attendees. I just signed on
Oh, you just signed on?
just to look at that, yeah.
Okay, okay. So you could see the PowerPoint, but you couldn't see like the conversation?
I wasn't paying attention. I was
Okay.
focused on the attendees.
All right. Well, then we
I
can
might
just
have, I
continue.
can sign back on.
Okay. No, it's fine. We're good. Go ahead, please start. Just got it from her. We're good.
Okay. So I just have a summary slide here before we move into the near-term board considerations. So the Water Efficiency Master Plan incentive program participation levels are aspirational, and though they will be a challenge to meet, we hope that being able to leverage our community outreach and engagement to really encourage our customers to learn about our programs, reach those people who haven't heard about us or haven't shown interest yet, to help us meet those goals. If we are able to meet those Water Efficiency Master Plan goals, it will result in retaining the water savings that we achieved during the drought and avoiding that historic rebound that we've seen in the past. We only touched on a few sections of the master plan, so I hope that you all have, hopefully can go and look at it. I'll just note that within each section, there's a what's next section, similar to what Adrian went through, outlining additional activities, tasks, and evaluation. So for example, our school education program, we talk about what our school education program is, and under next steps, we talk about an evaluation we're completing about evaluating whether or not and how our program supports the next generation science standards to assist us in outreach to our teachers, to be able to say, not only is it a fun field trip, but here's some science standards that you would no longer have to touch on in the greater detail, or we would support you in that way. And so we think that that'll help market those programs as well. So those types of actions that we're looking at evaluating and really improving the program upon as we move forward. And then finally, our pilot projects and policy considerations will be further developed. And then of course, we'll bring those back to the board as they are progress through that evaluation. So I'll just pause here, or should I just move on to the next section?
Well, now you want to get to some of the more specific decisions here. I would like to pause for a second. I have a comment that I think may end up being a repeated comment for meetings for us going forward, which is more about process and culture. That relates here a little bit, but also how we go about decision making at Marin Water. In some ways, I've found that we have some work to do on building trust with our customers, and some naysayers about every decision we make has people that don't like it. And in some ways, I think we have trust to build with our internal staff as well. And so as we think about culture, I think the most important thing about being able to have the best ideas rise to the top is to build that trust. And the best way to build that trust is to engage, talk, listen, bring people together, and not have the us versus them. Like, you board, you make the policy decisions and we'll do our best to do it. Or you staff, you just do the job and we'll tell you how to go. I think you customers, maybe we'll listen, we'll give you some data, but we'll do it in the public meetings. It highlighted for me when you mentioned that you had one public meeting and it was in Corte Madera. I met with some folks that are heavily involved in watershed activities today, who feel like that we are, as an agency, and have been for quite a long time, less in touch with our customers and community than I think we could be. And specifically, they have had other agencies that they work with where they meet on a regular basis with staff. And at Marin Water, for some reason, they go to the board because they find being in touch with the staff is very difficult. To get data from the staff is difficult and a little bit standoffish. And please don't take this personally, but I hope this is an opportunity. Phil Sauter has been coming to these meetings with really clear thoughts about analytics that he has. And he presents them to us. I would hope, as a process going forward, that you might have regular monthly meetings with a group of people that you think could be super thoughtful about how to do better. And the more you listen, I think you'll get some good nuggets, because I think he's got some great ideas. And just coming to the meeting here and, giving us his list for a couple of minutes is only one part of it. But really sit down with a couple of really good, thoughtful people every month, not just once to do the plan, and not just in public forums, but meet with our customers, meet with our community. And that, I think, goes for the watershed plan. Meet with the environmentalists on a monthly basis. Meet with them as much as you can and listen, because that will build trust. Even if you are doing all the right things, even if you're doing everything exactly correctly, if you have those conversations, if you engage with folks, you might do better, and at minimum, they'll feel participated in it. And I think that will help take away the idea of, well, if you guys want us to do it, then, it really is all of us together, listening, opening up, understanding the analytics, having the discourse, and then making the call and moving forward.
right. I'm going to move on to the next section, which is review of the proposed incentive changes. So again, these are these near-term considerations that we've developed for the board to take a closer look at. So there's really 3 items here. We are developed a proposal to sunset the high-efficiency toilet rebate program and the clothes washer program, and then launch a custom rebate for our commercial, industrial, and institutional dedicated irrigation and multifamily customers. Basically everyone other than single-family customers, which is the majority of our targeting for our other programs. So taking a deeper dive onto each one of those items. So our toilet replacement program. So here's a list of kind of the history of the policy and the incentives for our toilet replacement programs. It's a long-standing program, and we've gotten to the point, we see it in the flume data, and we see it in our very low winter water use, that we've likely hit saturation for toilet replacements. We have very low participation, about 2 rebates a month, and it just seems like the resources for this program could be better allocated elsewhere within the program. The other item is our high-efficiency clothes washer program. Very similar to toilets, we're seeing a high level of saturation, low level of participation. We also, with clothes washers, see that market transformation through codes are reducing water use with clothes washers. So, for example, just in February, the Department of Energy published new standards for residential clothes washers. So we can see them that others are going to continue to ratchet down, and our incentives are not motivating customers to take action and replace their clothes washer. Instead, we have a bunch of free riders, which are people who learn about our rebate after they've made their purchase and determine whether or not they qualify and pursue it. So we're not motivating our customers to take action through the rebate, which is our intent. So those are the 2 items that are being proposed for sunsetting. The new program offering is our custom rebate. So this would be something to support our customers to do upgrades that are not covered through any of our other existing programs. So for example, a multifamily housing, we get rid of our toilet replacement program. If our multifamily housing who hasn't replaced their toilets can come to us and say, here's the water savings, we know that's been documented, then they could come through this program instead, right? And so we can still support those folks in a more meaningful way and justify the water savings and actually see the water savings that we're paying for. So how would we calculate this custom rebate? We'd of course look at fixture savings or the widget savings, whatever it might be, the fixture life and the costs. They need to be reliably estimated and verified through the district staff. So basically there's a pre-inspection or pre-conversation before someone goes and just makes a change and then comes to us for the incentive. The customer rebate amount would be the lesser of either 50% of the project cost or $3 per CCF. And that $3 per CCF is calculated based on 75% of the cost of water purchased from Sonoma Water. So, each year potentially that would shift depending on our cost of water. The rebate payments would be made in 2 installments, 50% upfront to provide some support for those folks making these large investments so that, they're not carrying the full burden for a full year, and then the remaining 50% after we see the demonstrated water savings. After the last discussion where we talked about this item, we did add in a additional administrative approval if anything's over $25,000, and so that would follow our purchasing approvals within the district that we have. So that was a great addition. So I did also include some examples as we discussed last time. I won't go through each one. I'll just pick one, like the washing machine ozone unit. So this is a ozone device that gets added on to a commercial washing machine, minimizes the use of hot water, so they could generally get an energy rebate too, which is great. An example would be about 300,000 gallons saved for each device. The cost is about $4,000. I'm looking at line 2 here. The rebate based on savings would be about $12,000, but because we do the lesser of the 2, we would actually only pay $2,000 for this device, resulting in a cost per acre foot of $209. So here's just a few examples that we've seen from other water utilities who have implemented similar programs so that we can get a better idea of what it would look like if they occurred in our service area. So in summary, the water efficiency incentive changes that we're proposing have 2 staff recommendations. One, that the board directs staff to return with an action item of sunsetting the current toilet and clothes washer rebate effective July 1. It's nice that it kind of tees up with the fiscal year, but it also gives folks the last, anyone else who's kind of coming through the program an opportunity to do so. And then the other item would be to return to, with an item launching the custom rebate program for board's consideration. I will just note here, we have a committee meeting on the 15th of May, and this would be something that we could bring back as review and refer if there was interest to move forward in that direction. So I'll pause here before we move into policy discussion.
So no further steps on these points today. This is something that we'll be
So the-
considering during the committee meeting.
Correct. It's informational item only for today, but we can bring it back as a review and refer, which is will be fairly turnkey.
I find this very exciting. And we don't talk much about that sector. But as I recall, it's about 1/3 of our water is used by those folks. So it's a very painless way to the individual to reduce water usage. And things like, some things you had listed there, like going to dry tower instead of a wet cooling tower. That's a permanent savings. They work well. Probably most people would prefer them once they had them. No maintenance on the cooling tower. And I find that stuff is really a good idea. And I don't know about the numbers. 25 may be enough, may not be enough to incent them to do something. But I think most restaurants and that end of the stick are pretty concerned right now about their overhead. So they're incented to get their overhead down, and things we can do to help them. And, put water conserving stars, give them like a health department, A, B, C, give them something to put in the window to say, we participate in this and we're doing this and we're saving X gallons. I think that kind of stuff would be really useful to the commercial side.
All right, I'm going to move on. Thank you.
Sorry, I have a comment. I'm curious how you came up with 75% of the Sonoma cost. If we're targeting as a net present value $1,830 per acre foot savings over the course of this, why wouldn't anything better than $1,830 be the target for an incentive? And why 75%? And maybe even more, why is the Sonoma cost the target when we're talking about many thousands of dollars per acre foot for some of the other water supply and storage concepts that we're looking at?
It was somewhat arbitrary, I would say. We did look at what other water utilities offered as well, which aligned with that 75% of their highest cost of their most expensive cost of water. It seemed to make sense to do that, recognizing that Sonoma Water is about 25% of our total supply. So I think that was the thought process. So
It's also, not specifically on the numbers, but generally, I think looking at it and then doing some discounting is prudent way to spend public dollars in this. And specifically, we could replace an ice maker at a restaurant, I don't know, 10 grand that goes out of business the next day. There's going to be uncertainties. So I think starting out with a program like this that has the big dollars, looking at it and then discounting is prudent, but notwithstanding your question of where those numbers originally came from, I think we can take a look at that.
Well, I'll assume you calculated it given some number of frozen ice makers go out. But okay, yeah. If we're looking at making decisions on spending many thousands of dollars per acre foot for new storage supply, then I would be thoughtful about thinking of our water efficiency efforts in the same lens.
all right. And then kind of wrapping up with our proposed policy changes. So there's two items we're going to cover here. One is our gray water ordinance, and the other is the fixture standards code. So starting with our gray water ordinance, So back in 2016, the district adopted an ordinance that required the installation of a gray water system for any new or enlarged water service that was a result of a substantial remodel. And a substantial remodel is at 50% or more of the existing floor area. So large projects is what we're talking about here. We began tracking the compliance with this program in 2020, and through 2022, we found that 272 sites were subject to the gray water ordinance, and 90% of those sites self-certified, which was the method at the time, that installation of gray water was not feasible. We made some administrative changes to kind of address that, that not feasible criteria, and we required folks to document, or applicants to document evidence that they weren't able to actually install a gray water system, looking at plumbing codes essentially, right? So if there was a reason within the plumbing code that they couldn't install it, then it was in fact not feasible. At the time, we also added a stub out option, which was included as part of compliance. That just means that the laundry to landscape indoor portion was all plumbed and ready to go, but it wasn't actually being used to irrigate any landscaping. And so since that change in November, 35% of the sites are still being deemed not feasible, yet 47% are installing these stub outs. So essentially, none of those folks, right, the non-feasible and the stub out, they're not really meeting the original intent of the ordinance, which was to reduce outdoor water use, right, to have an alternative water source to supplement outdoor irrigation. And so staff has developed a proposal to update the current ordinance to allow 4 distinct options for these, again, new construction and substantial remodels. This would be option number 1 is installation of low or very low plant material for any new or rehabilitated planting area. So if you're doing a project and it doesn't touch the backyard at all, your backyard's not required to comply with this. It's just for the area that's impacted as part of the project. The other option would be to install a gray water system or to install a rainwater catchment system. And finally, to irrigate with recycled water, which is actually already required within our code. So we did a financial assessment to look at the incremental costs of these proposed changes. The drought tolerant or low or very low plant material comes in at about $4,500 an acre foot. We have customer cost listed here. This is really cost of installation, although these folks would be installing landscaping anyways, because these are areas that were impacted as part of their project. So, I think that's kind of up for debate whether or not how much that customer cost actually would play into this option within the 4. But nevertheless, we estimated a customer cost. For the gray water system, there are options. We were saying there's the stub out option, and what the water savings are. There's no water savings, so we don't have a cost there. Laundry to landscape and a complex system have a range from about $13,000 to about $18,000 per acre foot. And rainwater catchment with a $2,500 investment would cost customers about $40,000 per acre foot for that 500-gallon capacity system. We didn't include a cost for recycled water again because it's required. So in summary, in review of the gray water code changes, the staff recommendation is to have the board direct staff to repeal and replace the current district code requiring gray water and adopt a new ordinance providing compliance methodologies that are listed below. So these installation of drought tolerant landscaping, they're excited about gray water or rainwater, they could do either of those instead, and then the recycled water option as required.
Carrie, how do we manage enforcement of these ordinances?
Right, so they're pulling building permits, and they have to walk up to the counter if it's new or a substantial remodel to let us know, because it's tied to an enlarged service. So they need a larger meter. So they're coming here and telling us that they're doing these projects.
When you say drought tolerant, low or very low plant material, what does that mean?
Yeah,
I think
so
a lot of people think it's like cactuses everywhere.
Right. So there's a classification, this WUCLS, which is the water use classification. So we're not talking about cactus and rocks, right? There's a number of low water use plant material that's vibrant and colorful and very green. There's even low water use if it wasn't as late and had such a long day, I might even come up with a name of a plant. But I'm sure our native plant folks who are online would be able to provide a number of options.
Caraspanza, you know,
There you
you
go.
can do clover, you can, yeah.
Yeah, it's a leading question because I think it would be really helpful to actually have some images of what these landscapes look like, so that folks just have a sense of what it is that we're actually looking to. It's not the English garden that we often vilify in our Western landscape environment that we see.
All of my slides should have photos like Adrian's, so you could tell the communications person and then the technical person.
At one point, we had the front planter planted like that. So maybe that's an effort that could be fairly easily implemented right here in front of the building. And, let people see it.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. We have a whole resource page on our Water Smart Gardening resource page on the website with a number of plant suggestions and plant lists and a plant picker with pictures. Like there's all sorts of tools out there to help folks appreciate the beauty of low water use plants. All right. And finally, our fixture standard codes changes. So the district currently has fixture standards embedded in our code. They touch on all of the fixtures listed on the right, and they apply to any plumbing fixture that's installed, moved, replaced in any new or existing service. So it's quite extensive. In addition to the indoor fixtures for residential and non-residential as listed, we have some commercial equipment specifications also within the code. So this began back in the 90s, and the most recent update was 2009. So needless to say, there's a lot that's changed within plumbing code standards and, reduction goals and levels within these fixtures. So our code is just outdated. So what we're proposing here is building on industry standards to provide an alternative to updating our code, right? Recognizing many of our local jurisdictions do look to the water district to say, what is a realistic level of water use for any particular fixture maybe, or landscaping, et cetera. And so not to just extract it from the code, but actually to leverage some other tools that are already being utilized, such as CalGreen. CalGreen standards are used by our local building departments, and they're updated every 3 years. You can see there some of the other items that CalGreen touches on. We actually have some of our local jurisdictions that have the CalGreen water conservation rules embedded as part of their checklist already. So it's really just a code cleanup for us. The building departments have an established process for verification and reporting to ensure compliance. And then also CalGreen standards touch on all the plumbing fixtures we had listed and then some. So even for a large commercial building that they know is going to be subdivided, they'll have them put in sub-meters as a requirement of CalGreen. So that's to our benefit right there as well. Finally, for the kitchen specifications, we're suggesting converting to the Consortium of Energy Efficiency, who develop water and energy standards for commercial kitchen equipment. They're just, using material that's already out there and rules that are already out there instead of developing our own. So in summary, the proposal is staff recommendation would be to direct staff to revise the current fixture standards to align with CalGreen for interior fixture standards and also for the non-residential interior plumbing fixtures. And also direct staff to revise the commercial kitchen equipment specification to align with CEE and just to streamline the regulatory text. For example, we define what a dipper well is in our code. Completely unnecessary. All we need to do is say what the standard is for dipper wells. And if you use a dipper well, you know exactly what it is. We don't need that commentary within the code necessarily. So it's an opportunity to do some cleanup. So with that, I just have one more slide of next steps, if I may. All right. 3 items for next steps. So incorporate board input to the Water Efficiency Master Plan for review at a future Communications and Water Efficiency Committee meeting. As I mentioned, we have one scheduled for May 15th. And I think we've received some feedback already, and we know kind of a more idea of kind of the details that folks are looking for, so we can incorporate that into the next presentation. Second item would be to update the incentive program changes for the board's consideration at that same meeting, and finally develop a proposed policy considerations once we hear what the board's take is on those policy items. Thank you.
Carrie, help me think of, we hear a lot of, we do hear some concern about the high costs on our customers for some of the the policy considerations. And they look obviously very high when you think about them on an acre foot level. Obviously, the actual costs, the absolute costs for any individual household are quite low. Nevertheless, we get this argument that it's a very expensive activity on an acre foot basis. It's just how do we sort of reconcile that or consider approach this concern?
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? It really is. It's kind of like another way to look at that would be, we want to make sure that they're installing the best available technology from the get-go, right? And so as you're installing a new landscape, making sure it is as water efficient as possible, because in turn they can roll out sod and then knock on our door and we'll give them $3 a square foot to take it out, and even though they just put it in, right? And so just finding that balance, and it's not easy. I mean, maybe Paul has some brilliant suggestions, but I struggle with it as well. Stuff.
Brilliant suggestions notwithstanding, it's true. Rainwater catchment, gray water facilities on an acre-foot basis are certainly up there with the highest water supply options. And yet the ordinance that we're proposing does have options. So if you're excited about a gray water project at your house and you want to go do it, we'll help you incentivize it in a limited way. But it would be a customer choice to take on one of those very expensive items. Rainwater or gray water. In terms of the landscaping component, I think Carrie pointed out that this is an area where you'll already be doing that work because this has been identified in a project area that you're working on. So while we assigned a certain cost to the landscaping, in reality there would be a cost there anyway. And that cost can vary greatly. If I was doing the project, it might be mulch everywhere and nothing else. And someone else may be putting in a Rodin sculpture garden with crushed granite, right? I mean, they're just different, very, very different customer costs. So I think, in the landscaping component, the customer's already kind of accepted that they've got a cost there.
Right. And I guess maybe one other perspective is that on an acre foot level, these are very expensive. At an individual household level, they are not that. They're obviously much less expensive because each household is going to save a small fraction of that acre foot. But cumulatively, when you add up those savings across a large population, they start to result in numbers like 4,000 acre feet a year of reduction, which, as we've said, potentially reduces some of the infrastructure requirements that we're considering. So
Right.
From that perspective, it doesn't seem like such a bad deal.
But looking at the options of the policy recommendations or proposed changes, I don't know if you could bring that slide back up. What does, for the gray water, the options there, I mean, what is the end goal in terms of conservation from these new proposals? What kind of savings are we actually going to see from any of this? I mean, a 500-gallon storage tank is a nominal amount regardless of scale throughout the district. I mean, we do it at home. That's how much we have. And I mean, it's not going to be saving me. I'm not going to see a return on investment on that for a long time. And I don't think that the district is going to see a noticeable impact on conservation from that either. So the question becomes, with those new options, what are we driving towards in terms of purpose?
Yeah, it is water savings, and you can see on this slide when we did the financial assessment, we did include the water savings. So we include customer costs and then the potential water savings at the, so for example, drought tolerant landscaping, 500 square feet with our estimated water savings there.
Right.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, I see the landscaping one, yes, but when you start looking at the gray water piece or the rain barrel piece,
Just giving options. It's really just recognizing that some people are really excited about gray water. And so instead of saying that you have to install this drought tolerant landscape, we want to actually allow you to choose a gray water system if that's what you're excited about. And the easiest method for compliance and alignment with the intent of the rules would be drought tolerant landscaping.
I
Right.
think the question though is that works if the water savings is generally equal.
yeah, absolutely. So right, it's apples to oranges. I mean, my thought is instead of having a gray water system or a rainwater catchment system component in there, why not just enhance the incentive or something like that so that if they do go to build, they'll be getting a discount potentially, the diminishing number, as opposed to saying, hey, you can save a lot of water with a drought tolerant landscape, but if you don't want that, you can save a nominal amount instead here with an expensive water caption system. It just doesn't seem like it's a good selection of options to have in terms of if we're really trying to ask for water conservation. I get the point of trying to ride the wave of momentum when people get excited about conservation things, but it just doesn't seem like a 500-gallon capacity storage is really going to move the needle.
I think it's a fair point.
So you're saying the gray water and the rainwater catchment may not be worth it?
Well, it's interesting in terms of, when we start looking at other communities that have dealt with, very arid climates that are requiring these in their codes for building codes, they're much larger, much more substantial systems. And I think they actually do potentially move a needle a bit more, as well as, actions that are people taking throughout the day because it's an ethos that they live with. I just don't know if those are real solutions to put up there in terms of, hey, we're going to be solving a problem with this. I just don't see it.
I mean, it seems to me that the gray water is somewhat comparable to landscaping. It's really the rainwater with our Mediterranean climate where it's hard to get significant savings.
Yeah, and as long as the gray water system doesn't come with the same carve outs, I can give you, here's my I can't do it sticker.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree with what Ben said? That maybe the rainwater one is not financially worth it? And what are your thoughts about the gray water option?
Go ahead, Gary.
I do agree that the rainwater one it's originally we talked about doing area of roof capture, right? Which then would result in something very significant, like to potentially like 20,000 gallon capture. The cost would be much higher, right? But it would then put them on par. That just felt like the cost became such a huge barrier that, well, let's, reduce it down, and then, you get reduced down to 500. So,
And I don't mean to come across as not appreciative of this because like I said, I'm going to get home tonight and fill my water buckets from my rain capture system because Sunday they might get refilled a little
yes.
bit from Saturday. But I think it's a really valid incentive program. And I really appreciate the fact we're trying to give options to the folks when the gray water system didn't work. I just don't know if this is the right option to provide in this category.
So retaining the rainwater as an incentive, but separate outside of the ordinance, as it were. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, these are options that people can choose from, and so people can choose that if they want to. It has a low return on investment, but
Yeah, but this is a policy decision that we're going to force people to make, right?
well, but they're going to have to choose one of these four things anyway. Why not give an option that's, I mean, that if they don't like that, then they don't choose that. If we take it off of here, then it ceases to be one of the options that they can choose from.
Right, but I think with the incentives different from policy, right? So policies, we're trying to drive an output or that. And if we give four choices that give very different outputs, how are we driving a policy that is getting to the same place, if that makes sense?
Yeah, the challenge with rainwater, I think everyone understands, right? The 500 gallons only gives us 1,000 gallon savings because the assumption is you only get to use it twice, right? If you're on the East Coast, the numbers would be so different, right? Because it rains through the year. So that really is a challenge. Now, people do like the notion of rainwater, so keeping it in the incentive program, I think, does make sense. But the thing here is it's 1,000, and you look at the mid-range of drought tolerant, and it does seem like it's not apples to apples in terms of driving savings with new development.
I don't disagree.
Do we have sorry, Monty, just one question on that. Do we have a similar issue with the step out only gray water system?
So the staff recommendation is to not allow stub out. It just was included for the cost analysis.
I mean, the other option might be to increase, the rainwater to an equivalent number. But, as you know, many of our yards, those are big tanks, right? So it becomes a challenge.
Yeah,
for
and it
that.
seems like new development's not going to be providing for pretty massive yards either on that piece.
Right.
Is there an exploration of multifamily housing requiring some sort of larger capture? Or is that kind of negated with recycled water potentially during some of those areas, or?
I think in the area where we have recycled water service, it is negated. I don't know that many multifamily have, plans for gray water. I haven't seen that.
No. It would have to have someone on site probably managing as well. So understood. Thank you.
It seems to me that one of the things that's dawned on me while we've been talking is Larkspur Landing, the whole shopping center, and I don't know how far back it goes to the Marriott or those, the whole shopping center is dual plumbed, has been dual plumbed for 40, 30 years. Maybe there's a way we could help them to switch them off. I don't know how much water they use. No idea. But maybe we could switch them off. They have a fair amount of irrigation, just in planters and things. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could help them with some kind of an on-site treatment system that would produce gray water for them from a Blackwater system that they could use. I don't know. I mean, we're probably talking, $1 million or something like that for their kind of system. Like I say, I have no idea how much water they use, but it was clearly enough that they decided to require them to put in the dual plumbing when the thing was built. So something to think about. And, you mentioned the 500, the 1,000 or whatever the number is. The problem, of course, is the rainwater fills when you don't need it. And then it's full. And it's, you remember my story that I looked at putting in a 20,000 gallon buried tank, and it was over $100,000 when I moved here in '92, probably $250,000 now. But that's what I calculated you needed, was something like 20,000 gallons. Now, in my situation, looking at it differently, I've given up on the grass. Now, I haven't decided where I'm going, but I've stopped watering the grass. And, as I said, it actually looks fine right now. It's a little spotsy, the grass, but it's doing what it does in the real world, which is dry out and then recover and dry out and then recover. So, there's ways of addressing this issue. It isn't something that I feel I need to act on now, like get in there and change it, So that's a kind of change that costs maybe $6 to put pipe caps on sprinklers, not very much. My wife is insistent on certain things. We have $2,000 worth of hedges in the front yard that we put in, and she wants to water them. So we water them a little bit, drip. But it's a pretty low impact, all in all, on lifestyle. Like, it just looks like when you forget to water it or let it dry out. So I think there's potential here. The rainwater, I think, unless we get serious, to much bigger numbers than 500 to make it interesting. I would think you'd need at least 5,000 to make it usable. But for instance, I don't have a need for it now. So wiping out the grass wipes out the need for the bulk of the water. So then it becomes, what do you do then? So there's complicating factors. I like the gray water systems, but they are complex and pricey and complex to put in. I've done a few friendly analysis for friends. Just, what do you think would do? It's tricky. It's tricky. The costs and collecting the water is not the easiest task in the world.
I just wanted to share when Ranjiv and I met with David Sedlak at Berkeley and talking about research that's out there, he did bring up that there's research starting with a vision to have off-the-shelf commercial gray water systems that you can just plug and play. And, his point is, at your home, you have a furnace. If you really think about it, there's flames and gases but it works. You don't have to worry. You just turn it on, and it's well-designed, well-engineered. So it's interesting that he came up with that, and it does make sense. And at some point, hopefully we'll get there. But today, yeah, these are very, very complex and hard to maintain, very hard. It's got to be almost a hobby for someone to put it in and maintain it and be into it.
Yeah, or you get the other part of this, which is I have a patent on controlling invasive species in ballast water. And what happens there is the ships have treatment systems, just like they have sanitary black water treatment systems. They're black boxes. They're the ships I've been in, the top of the unit is maybe 6 inches from the deck above it. In other words, you can't even see in it. And all they care about is it complies with the Coast Guard regulations. So they have their black water treatment system. How it runs, who knows? The same thing with ballast water. It's very, very tricky. But, so you got sort of that side of it, which is you just put a black box in and let it run. Or you actually put a treatment plant in that's monitored and, controlled. So it's tricky in this whole area.
Interesting stuff. I'm wondering if we should make a recommendation to staff to reconsider the rainwater catchment system as part of the policy initiative, instead maintain it as an incentive.
I'd like to before we do that, just continue to voice the support of the drought tolerant plant piece. And I see a lot of synergies going on right now as we move to a fire tolerant landscape that's going to be eventually enforced throughout. I mean, the town of Woodside last night just approved an ordinance, no vegetation within 5 feet of the home, nothing combustible, district-wide, retroactive back to existing structures. So I think we have an opportunity here as people look to do that this is the right move for as we go forward. So I appreciate putting that forward.
Okay, I think we have the information we need on rainwater.
Larry is reminding me that we should also have public inputs into this conversation. Thank you, Larry.
Yes, we have a few. Phil Sauter, then Larry Minikis, please.
Thank you for speeding up the goal for significant savings and providing cost comparison with other supply alternatives. To set my own goals for potable water conservation, I started with the amount of potable water that we're currently using for non-potable purposes, mostly outdoor landscaping. We know that residential customers use 68 gallons per capita per day and that indoor use is 30 gallons. That means that 38 gallons, or 56%, is being used outdoors where non-potable water would be fine. That translates to 7 million gallons a day, or 8,000 acre-feet a year. Staff's current goals are to reach 42% of that potential by 2035 and 52% by 2045. The estimated cost for staff's program is $1,830 per acre foot, which I believe is cheaper than Sonoma Water when treatment costs are included. Not only does staff's evaluated conservation program beat the cost of other water supply options, but it also lets us live within our own watershed, independent of other districts deciding how much water to give us. It doesn't require a large capital investment that increases our water bills forever, whether we use outdoor water or not. It doesn't add to an already complex infrastructure, and conservation budgets can go up or down depending on the district's financial situation. It means we don't have to bring in lower quality water and increase treatment levels, and it means our existing water supply can be extended by nearly half a year. Outdoor water conservation can begin immediately. We already have one program, turf conversion, that can be dusted off and quickly return to 2021 levels. We can continue finding other options, plus we can also start acting now. I'm not suggesting Las Vegas landscapes, although some may choose to reduce thirsty lawns. What I am suggesting is reducing the use of potable water where it's not needed. I'll call that a supply rationalization, to use potable water where it makes sense and use non-potable water where that makes sense. Supply rationalization can also be fast-tracked. We already have a recycled water distribution system that can be expanded to serve heavy outdoor users. We know from our billing system where those users are. We know how to lay more purple pipes. We know how to deliver to cisterns. We know how to help customers install efficient irrigation systems. It's not like we're asking ourselves to do things we've never done before. What I am asking is that we pick up the pace. As the board considers what legacy it wants to leave behind, I'll suggest that extending our potable water supply while supplying heavy outdoor users with a drought-resistant water supply would be a very worthwhile legacy, and one which all your customers will thank you for. I got 10 seconds, so I'll make another suggestion. If you really want to get people in the room, instead of sending out a mailer with a nice new landscape, drought-resistant landscape, send out a message that you're looking at spending, a couple $100,000 on conveyance or inundating West Marin with another reservoir. That'll get folks in the room.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the presentation. And I'm finding difficulty is in the use of metrics. In the past, the number we've been using is that the per capita day use is 124 gallons per capita, and that what we're trying to get to in 2045 is 106 gallons per day per capita, which is a 14.5% reduction. So it's always what we've been talking about. Now we're looking at residential use of 68 gallons per day per capita. So does this suggest that the rest of it is institutional and commercial? And if that's the case, why aren't we looking specifically at what could be done institutionally and commercially to reduce use? And are there incentives like lower per gallon cost for the incentives if they're put into place? So when you're looking at this fixture, upgrading the fixture code, can we go to restaurants and such, for example, and say, look, if you stop serving water, there'll be some savings there, because remember, that glass has to be washed. So it's not the 12 ounces, it's the 12 ounces plus the glass getting washed. So there's something there that can be saved, and there's other ways. Are there ultra efficient items that can be put into commercial kitchens, for example? And does it matter? Because we don't really know how much commercial use we have out there. So if we could see those numbers and understand that better, that would help. And the other place, this is coming back to the 4,160 acre feet that will be saved by 2045. I believe we're using about 25,000 acre feet per year, if I recall. So I did some quick math, and that's actually a 20% reduction between now and 2045. So we've got different numbers coming up that we hadn't seen in the past, and we need to understand why that's changing. It's kind of good that maybe it's changing for the positive, and we're looking at greater reduction by 2045, but what does that mean per capita per day? Are we now is the target now changed from 106 to 96 or something like that? This would be really helpful to understand. I think that would have actually helped when we got to slide 12, helped explain it a little better. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 more speakers, Ed Jamison, Eric's iPad, then Marilyn Price. But before we get to Ed Jamison, I want to thank all of our Zoom attendees for their patience with our audiovisual. Go ahead, Mr. Jamison. Mr. Jamison? Mr. Jamison?
He was talking.
Hold on. Mr. Jamison?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Hold on, I'm trying another audio way of getting in touch with you. Hold on.
Appreciate your ingenuity.
Let's try that.
Okay, this was an excellent presentation, but the plan document published this weekend is materially different from what was presented tonight. The Greywater ordinance that the plan's page 37 proposed to be rescinded is tonight instead proposed to be broadened. In November of 2022, conservation expert Madaus Consulting recommended that both the Laundry to Landscape and the Rain Barrels programs should be removed from the water conservation element plan because they offer trivial potential savings. And the plan's page A10 shows neither program to be cost effective. As for the CAP program and the residential water budget pilot program, both also failed to make the cut on the plan's page A10, which shows neither program is cost effective. The district's CAP cost is about $13,000 per acre foot, and the water budget program appears to be about the same. Both programs are a waste of ratepayers' money and need to be eliminated. Doing water consulting to a lot of different businesses, this would likely be very expensive with costs hard to justify, as is likely the case for many of the other ideas shown tonight. I believe staff needs to focus on making the existing excessively costly programs more effective or eliminating them. Make hot water recirculating pumps mandatory, as the plan suggested for consideration. I have one, and as I shared with district staff back in January, using the district's estimates for water savings and installation costs, I believe it could cost about $26,000 an acre foot. Mine costs at least $36,000 per acre foot, likely more, and that doesn't include the district's costs. And again, using the district's own assumptions, including the district's maintenance cost estimates of last summer rather than zero, as is assumed in the cost numbers you've seen tonight, the extremely high Greywater cost numbers presented tonight are grossly understated, likely only about half of what they really are. Correct cost information needs to be presented to the board. That's not what you have seen here. Laundry to Landscape and Rain Barrels should be voluntary, not mandatory. And WUCAL's landscaping would not be attractive for most customers. This would be Big Brother grossly intruding into their right to enjoy their homes. I think this idea is absolutely outrageous. The mandatory 2016 Greywater ordinance needs to be rescinded. Acre-foot cost estimates need to be presented for each program, including ratepayer install and maintenance costs, and including MMWD's costs. Several existing programs clearly do not make the cut. I believe that the plan should not be approved here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Give me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Echo. Anyway, this is Eric Groves. We've had several different presentations this evening, which highlight, I think, the fact that the actual customer that you have is not being presented properly. We have a sort of archetypical customer. They have a house, they have a lawn, they have so many people who live in the house, and they use water, some amount of it inside, some amount of it outside. And yet you have just presented sets of numbers that show that there's a wide disparity between the different kinds of customers, and the commercial ones are using a lot more water than the residential customers. So I think you really need to do some modeling of your customers. You know what the area of all their properties are, you know what their bills are, you know how many bedrooms there are in their houses. You can make a model of your customer. And then with that, you can generate computerized notices for people who are really outliers and discuss with them why it is they're an outlier and see what you can do to fix it. But this sort of thing about treating everybody the same is not working very well, and it's getting you screwy numbers. Thank you.
Next speaker is Marilyn Price.
Oh, I'm mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Marilyn. Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, well, there seems to be an echo, so I'll just try to speak quickly here. I just wonder, you talk about the residents that are hard to, well, one, I want to compliment you. This is extraordinary presentation, and you know, it's all so complex, and I applaud you for tackling it and dealing well with it. Thank you. I'm wondering how many of the of your customers are the hard to reach, because it just seems, just in my mind, that people really don't think about this other than the cost. I've mentioned this before, that I follow Nextdoor, and I read all these angry messages, and all they're doing is spewing out their anger towards you, toward the bills, and they don't really know what all they can do to lower their bill. That probably is the most important thing. You know, you have your environmentalists that are really going to care, but the rest are really, you know, either they don't care about their money, but a lot of them do. And I've brought up this before, what PG&E does. I loved the fact of your comparison. PG&E has been for some time sending, you get a comparison of how you stand with efficient homes, and it's in 3 categories, and I think it's really great. And then weekly I get an energy report, and it has to be delivered in the various ways that people receive it. I only see things, them either your mailing or by my email. You know, I don't do the other things. So it would, your messages would need to go out in all the ways that people are using it today. You talked about challenges. You know, I think I've mentioned this before, the idea of challenging cities where you have those old kiddo signs that are on the roads that people travel, that shows how your community is doing compared to Larkspur, et cetera. So that's just one idea. I also, so, you know, just how we actually reach the people who aren't really being reached. Then I like your idea, and I think that was probably, Chet, I couldn't see people, of, you know, staff meeting with, you know, like your environmentalists and a group of people, that we have more than these monthly meetings. And then it's up to us to get people to attend. So again, thank you. Thank you.
We have one more speaker. Jet.
I think it may. Oh, it's still echoing. I think it may be worth.
Mute.
Oh, is it? No, it's still echoing.
Hang in there.
It's better.
I think it may be worthwhile considering doing a cost comparison on dollars per acre foot basis between all the gray water reuse options that have been brought up, the desal options that have been brought up, and the dam raise options that have been brought up, and then lastly the Russian River extraction options, just so we really see what exactly each costs and how they compare to each other. Given there have been varying statistics mentioned about the cost of each of those avenues over time, and I think just a direct comparative chart, or viewing a chart comparing how they all stack up to each other, would be a good idea.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Okay, I don't think we have any other items on our agenda for today. So with that, we'll adjourn the special board meeting of May 1st, 2024. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Carrie, Paul, and Adrian for great presentations.